boys and girls, and welcome back to Miss Baker's Corner. Today, I have chosen one of my favorite books. It's Flat Stanley. We all know that Flat Stanley always take adventures and go everywhere. Well, today is Flat Stanley and the Very Big Cookie. His adventures with cookies. First, let me give you right, Mr. Bear? Let's get started today. Flat Stanley and the Very Big Cookie. Stanley Landchopped lived with his mother and his father, and his big brother Arthur. Stanley was 4 feet tall, about 4 feet wide, and half an inch thick. He had been flat ever since a bulletin board fell on him. People in Stanley Town like having a flat boy around, especially since Stanley was willing to lend a hand, or even a whole arm. He helped the librarian reach for books that slipped under the stacks. He helped the dentist smooth out new wallpaper in his office. And when the baker was busy, Stanley helped him frost cakes, 2 at a time. But one day, Stanley and Arthur went to Pete's Sweets and found that the baker wasn't busy at all. "What's wrong?" asked Stanley. "It's the baker in the next town," said Pete. "He's taking away all my business." "But how?" Stanley asked. "What does he have to do that you don't?" "2 words," Pete said. "Cake pops." "Oh, cake pops? Yummy," said Arthur. Stanley elbowed his brother. "What?" Arthur said. "They are." "It's true," said Pete, gloomy. "They are yummy." "So why don't you bake them too?" suggests Stanley. "I'll never copy another baker," said Pete. "I'm the one with the big ideals. The tart trend, I started that. The cupcake craze, me again." Then Pete held up a flyer. "This is my chance to get back my customers," said Pete. "I have to think of the next big ideal by Saturday." He threw his hands up in the air. A cloud of flour flew up as "I don't. My bakery is doomed. If I don't, my bakery is doomed." Boys and girls, I wonder what Pete is going to come up with. Let's see what Pete may come up with next to save the bakery. That night, Stanley and Arthur tried to think of an idea for Pete. Mini muffins, bite-sized brownies. Everything's been done before. "What about a nice coconut macaroon?" suggests Miss Lambchop. The boys didn't know what a macaroon was, but it don't sound like anything that could beat a cake pop. The next day was Friday. Stanley and Arthur stopped by the bakery after school. It was a mess. There was frosting everywhere. One whole table was covered with cookie dough. Candy balls rolled around on the floor. Boys and girls, what do we think going to happen next? see. Mr. Pete, called Stanley. What's going on? Woo! Stanley slipped on a candy ball. His flat arms made a windmill as he tried not to fall. Pete came out the kitchen just in time to see Stanley land smack face first in a cookie dough. Arthur peeled his brother off the dough. There was a Stanley-shaped dent in it. "I'm so sorry, Pete," said Stanley. But Pete was staring at the dent with a strange smile on his face. "The next big ideal," he said. "It's big." Pete started racing around the bakery. The boys didn't know exactly what his plan was, but they pitched in. Stanley and Arthur helped mix a giant batch of cookie dough. They rolled it out on the table. Then Pete pulled up a chair. "Stanley, would you climb up here and fall on the door again?" "Okay," said Stanley. "But does it have to be face first this time?" Pete grinned and shook his head. Stanley got up on a chair. He took a deep breath and fell backwards. "Perfect," said Pete. "Arthur, pull away the extra dough." Pete and Arthur pulled and pulled. Then they helped Stanley up. On the table laid a gingerbread boy. It was 4 feet tall, about a foot wide, and half an inch thick. "Just like you," Arthur told Stanley, "only good looking." The cookie looked even better when it was baked and decorated. "Wow," said Stanley. "This might sound weird, but I want to take a bite in my hand." "Not now," said Pete. "We have 3 dozen kid-sized cookies to make." Whoa. Boys and girls, do you think you can eat a whole cookie the size of you? Let's see how well it went. The next morning was a food fair. Lamb Chops walked down Main Street. "Look at that," said Mr. Lamb Chop. There was a huge crowd outside of Pete's Sweets. They were waiting to buy kid-sized cookies. But there were 2 cookies that weren't for sale. "These are for you," said Pete. "Thanks for saving the day." "I always knew I had the sweetest boy in the world," said Mrs. Lamb Chop. The boys groaned. And then they took a bite. The Adventures of Flat Stanley and the Very Big Cookies. Can't wait to see you again, boys and girls. Bye for now.